Because of a bill that Governor Jan Brewer passed this week in Arizona, the gun buyback program in Phoenix will probably end forever, or at least until we get some sane people in government in Arizona. So you might have heard that there were a number of charity drives to raise money to then be used by the Phoenix Police Department, as is done in many cities around the country, to buy back guns from people who no longer want them. Then the guns would be destroyed. For the last 4 or 5 months, there's been a lot of conflict around this. Back in December, a program like this was going on after the Sandy Hook shootings. They wanted to gather up these guns as a show of support. And to stop something like this possibly from happening in Phoenix, protesters showed up. They got the attention of lawmakers in Arizona who then sponsored a bill. It was passed and signed by the governor to say that if you're going to do these gun buybacks, which apparently they can't stop them from doing at least in the short term, you can no longer destroy the guns, you have to sell them back to gun retailers, which is mind-blowing. They're trying to get guns off the streets, not just let them cycle through a bit more profit for the people selling the guns and then get them back on the streets. So let's talk about a few of the people who are involved in this, a few of the politicians and people in the police. So Phoenix Police Sergeant Steve Martos said, "Obviously, a gun buyback event is an effort to reduce the amount of guns that are out in the community. And if we were to get involved in a gun buyback event and then resell those to an authorized dealer, that again might, defeat the purpose." We have different purposes, though. The people trying to stop children from being shot in Phoenix have a very different thing on their mind than people who are trying to get good NRA ratings or donations from the NRA, either in the House in Arizona or possibly Governor Brewer as well. Mayor Greg Stanton of Phoenix says that this, just 3 or 4 years ago, was not a politicized event at all. You did the buybacks. They happen here in LA all the time. He says, "You don't politicize public safety. You let public safety decisions be made by law enforcement leaders. You gotta, to the extent possible, keep politics out of police practice." So that's not going on. Politics is wholeheartedly in police practice in public safety right now, at least in Phoenix, at least in Arizona. So let's talk about why this is going on. We know why this is going on. There are gun nuts around the country. Some of them happen to live in Phoenix. Now I should say Arizona. Arizona has been a testing ground for some of the most extreme conservative legislation over the last few years. Now, most of that tends to be focused around immigration. I have a feeling some of the people trying to keep guns in the hands of Phoenix and Arizona residents probably are thinking about immigrants, Hispanic immigrants, while they're doing it, but that's not the sole driving force. Guns have become a religion in this country, or perhaps haven't become. Perhaps they have been for decades, for over 100 years. People are obsessed over their guns. They're obsessed over their gun rights. And I think that it's so ironic that if you were to ask somebody, to play devil's advocate, why do you think it's so important to have no restrictions whatsoever on guns? And bear in mind, this isn't even a restriction. These people are voluntarily giving them up. They would say, we need to be able to protect our rights. The Second Amendment is the one that protects all the others, because if the government comes to take away our rights, we can use our guns to stop them. And yet we know what's been going on in this country over the last few years, over the last decade. Your rights have been steadily eroded. And I don't see those people with the Second Amendment stepping up to protect those. They seem incredibly willing to allow the government and private corporations to invade their privacy, to do unlawful searches and seizures, to share their information, to declare people enemy combatants, as happened in Boston just recently, to conduct drone strikes that kill American citizens abroad. They're not speaking up about that. So they say the Second Amendment is intended to protect the others, and yet they seem only concerned in protecting the second. This is an obsession. And even something as innocuous as giving money to people who no longer want their guns. They're not seizing the guns. They're saying, we will give you $100 for a handgun, $200 for an assault weapon, and you give it to us and we destroy it. That's not good enough. The NRA will not allow that to happen. The politicians that the NRA has bought will not allow that to happen. And unfortunately now Phoenix will not allow that to happen. So despite the fact that the politicians in Phoenix, the police in Phoenix like this, they don't want a Sandy Hook in Phoenix. At least in the next few years, the chances have not dropped and will not continue to drop because of efforts like Jan Brewer and other Republicans who are in the tank for the NRA.